Let's get it. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, SchuZ Shoemaker. Welcome to the SchuZ Show. Joining me to start the show off today is a man that holds a 17-3 record with 7 KOs. He goes by the nickname Too Slick. That's Chris Kongo. Chris, appreciate taking time to come on today, man.
Yeah, I'm all good, man. I'm all good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Well, obviously, you're coming off a disappointing performance against Owen Cooper, and I know we were just kind of talking about that backstage a little bit, but now that you've had, a little bit of time to process the loss, a little bit of time to reflect on it,
Mhm.
where are you standing right now mentally at this point in time?
Mentally, I'm still strong. I still know
Mhm.
what I can do in a game. Maybe I'm a person that will come on better the later, like the older I get.
Right.
I'm experienced now, which is good. I've done the rounds, which is good, but I know what I need to do moving forward, which is step up.
And we're going to get into that stuff. But I really want to go through your career because what I look at and notice about you is that you've had losses in your career. We've always found a way to bounce back from them. And I think that's something that
hmm
is a largest testament to yourself, how you've been able to bounce back even when you take those losses. And so I want to get to know you better and know about how you've gotten to the place you're at today. And so if we're going to go all the way back, though, we've talked about yourself growing up in the UK. Was boxing always something that you loved? Did that come on later on in life? Or how did boxing start for yourself?
Boxing is something that I loved. I
Mhm.
went to a amateur boxing gym called Fisher ABC in
Okay.
Bermondsey, which is in Southeast London.
Hmm.
And two of my brothers started fighting before me. And at the gym, it was more like a youth club with a boxing gym at the top.
Mm.
So I would more likely just go to the youth club, play table tennis, snooker, football, swimming, and then I found myself in a boxing gym, and I just loved it ever since.
At what point did that transition or a flip switch in your mind where you started saying, "This is something that I actually want to pursue now"? Like, I could see myself potentially going, amateur rank, but then even making that pro jump. When did that click for you?
That clicked when I was about 19, 20,
Okay.
and I had the situation of studying and boxing. I was doing both. I wasn't really taking both seriously that year,
Mm.
but then that was 2012. And
Okay.
then in 2013, I made the decision to just go hard at both, and whichever one um surpasses, that's my path, and that's what I'm gonna do. And I basically got to the nationals in the UK. I then got a call up, a trial for Team GB, and
Hmm.
then after that, I got into the squad, and from there I just pick up and excel.
If you were to evaluate your career to this point in time and all the fights you've had, 17-3, 7 KOs, as I alluded to in the beginning, has this career gone as you expected? Has it been a little bit less than you expected, more than you expected? How would you have reacted if I would have told you how your career has gone at that point in time?
I would say less than I expected because I really wanted to have more fights. So
Mm.
if you do look at my first two losses, they were just both down to experience,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So when I even sparred McKinson when he was having his first pro title, I was having my second pro fight.
Mm.
And what happened was nobody wanted to fight us. So we thought we'll just fight each other. But really, I didn't have the experience.
Right.
So that's something that I would change. I would change to get more experience and keep picking it up. And then when I am ready for titles, that's when I step on it.
So you would say that earlier in your career, you maybe made too big of a jump too quickly, you'd say?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Give us the mindset and the framework because obviously there's going to be countless more young up and coming fighters in the future. And when you're talking about the UK, you guys obviously have a little bit different formula in terms of how you guys reach the high points in the UK opposed to America. Obviously, you guys have the different Commonwealths, you guys have the British titles, those different things. When you
Mhm.
talk about that, what's the perfect way? What's the dream or the best way for a fighter to work their way up and get themselves ready to compete at the highest level?
In the UK, it's definitely fighting for the British title.
Hmm.
I think once you got the British title, you can then go for the Commonwealth, then the European. Then
Right.
once you've got the European, you're automatically 15 in the world. and then that qualifies you to fight for the world titles, and then you can fight a few world ranked fighters, and then go on to world level, which is what I'm gonna do as a super world.
Well, we're still getting to that a few minutes now, but I know when you talk about some of your career points, as we talked about, you've had some high wins. Obviously, you go and have your Luther Clay win, where you become the WBO Global Welterweight Champion. Then you go to Michael McKiss,
Mhm.
you obviously lose that one. So you had a lot of these ups and downs throughout your career. That has to be difficult at the same time, though. So how have you gone through that? Where you've gone from these highs of accomplishing things, and then obviously having little setbacks. How have you gone through that?
Just life, just getting back in the gym. I've uh, I've been through way worse, you know. So in life, setbacks happen, and you just have to pick yourself up and look where you went wrong. Take that as a lesson because it's not a loss, and you just gotta keep grinding.
I was going to say this, that I feel like boxing is, you can relate that more to life than about any other sport you do, because of the fact that you can get knocked down, you get back up. It's ultimately one of the only sports you can do where it's pretty much obviously have your team around you, but for the most part, when you step in a ring, it's you against your opponent. And that's not something you get
Of
to
course.
relate to life as much so as you can in boxing. How would you say that these trials and tribulations inside the ring have impacted you and helped you as a person now develop outside of that ring?
Well, they've helped me a lot,
Hmm.
They've helped me mentally, knowing that I can get over these things. For me as well, a big thing for me is my faith. So I put
Hmm.
my trust in God. I always say God's time is the best time and is the right time. So I just leave it all down to him.
How big has that faith been for you throughout your journey now?
It is the biggest. It's what comes
Hmm.
first. It comes first before boxing. And yeah, man, like I said before, God's timing is the best timing. So if it ain't gonna happen now, it will happen later down the line, but it will happen. And you just gotta have faith in yourself and trust the man upstairs.
Where would you say has been the biggest moment that you've had to rely upon God and then you've seen him work in your life?
That was against the Marky fight. After I lost to Eko Esiman,
Mhm.
I was trying so hard to get a fight. I couldn't get a fight. My promoter couldn't get me a fight at the time. I was with Boxer currently, and yeah, it just seemed so hard to get me a fight. And with the UK, they don't. After you take a loss, it's like they want to shelf you, and
Mhm.
it takes so long for you to get back in the ring. And it took me 13 months. And me personally, I think they brought Marker in to beat me. But I said, listen, if this is your time, then show me, work through me. And he did, and he did wonderful things.
I want to get into that situation for yourself, because that would be potentially your best performance of your career. Obviously, when you go out there and you look at what you did in that fight, that was obviously a huge performance against Marku. And I want to go into that because, like I said, that was probably one of, if not the best performance of your career. Walk us through
Mhm.
that mindset when you got in that ring and you had that fight. Would you say that was your best performance of your career?
Yes, I would say it's one of.
Okay,
I definitely think my wins against Luther Clay as well was very good.
agree.
That's a top performance as well. My win against Formella, who at the time was world level, he had only lost to Conor Ben and Shaw Porter. So I've
Hmm.
had some good wins in my time, but that I could say was probably the most satisfying win for
Sure.
me. And we really worked hard for that, and it all paid off.
Now, the thing that was interesting is you have that win earlier in the year last year, and then obviously I think you wanted some big fights. This never ended up coming to fruition last year in the calendar year. And I think that was a pretty big. I was researching, I found that was a little bit of a struggle for yourself because you wanted bigger fights. You ended up getting two more fights in that year. But when you
Mhm.
reflect back on 2024 after the Marcoux win, what was going through your mind? How was that year for yourself?
That year was a bit frustrating, but at the same time, changes had to be made.
Hmm.
I had to go through a change in management situation. I just wanted to be more busy. And listen, for a fighter and for a promoter as well, if you have a fighter that's had a brilliant win, why are you gonna then just shelf him? You know, it
Yep.
don't make sense. I wanted to be back out and busy, and I don't think I showed everything in that Marquee fight. I wanted to, build momentum from that.
Mhm.
So you guys could see a bit more of Chris Congo. But situations happen. I then was able to fight on the Riyadh season cards on the Wednesday, and they were both last minute, but I done what I had to do.
Can you walk us through the business side of that aspect? Because I feel like we see that with boxers so often. Fans that don't know the business side of that can be confusing because we see a fighter come off a career best or one of the best performances, and then people are saying we want to see him more. We want to see him back in the ring. And obviously, from the fans' perspective, that might just be saying things along the lines of, okay, he just doesn't want to fight, he doesn't want to be active, so on and so forth, because they don't know the business side of things. Can you take us
Mhm.
through that? And when you're going through a situation that you just came off a career best performance, you want to look at that and you think you probably have greater opportunities on the table. What is that business side like when you're trying to get a fight hammered out and you deserve a fight to be hammered out, but it's not coming to fruition?
So hard, so hard.
Mhm.
We work so hard to put these big fights and put these big performances on, and then after nothing happens, it's a bit stagnant, and which
Right.
is not nice at all. It's
Mhm.
not nice. We work hard for this, and we just want to keep busy and be active. That's all.
When you look back at last year, do you think anything you could have changed that you could have maybe made it a more active year for yourself, or do you think this was like 100% out of your hands?
It was 100% out of my hands.
Okay.
I was begging the promotional team to keep me busy and give me another fight, but it just wasn't happening. Only they know why.
Right.
So changes had to be made.
As you went through that year, then your other fights you got fighting in that year, you ended up fighting up a little bit more in weight classes. You're fighting around 155, I think it was that you weighed in at one, and then 150, 160 at the other one. When you talk about
Mhm.
making that jump in weight that year, what led to that?
That led to the last minute calls of me
Okay.
being, in the gym, just training, sparring, helping the boys, and the opportunity comes. So that was it. But that was me. I was actually comfortable at them weights. They're
Okay.
not too far off super welterweight. And a lot of people was telling me to stay at the weight, and I
Mhm.
shouldn't move back down. But I had my goal to, win something at welterweight, whether it's a European title, whether it's a WBC silver, or
Mhm.
get closer to even an interim title to then qualify me for a world title.
Okay.
Then that was it. But yeah, it is what it is.
You had a great opportunity at the end of the year last year to fight Riyadh season on a unique situation. Now, obviously, what Turkey's doing is quite unique, and you got to go fight there Riyadh season. Just what was that experience like?
It was lovely. It was beautiful. I would love to do it again. Saudi Arabia is a beautiful country.
Yeah.
Um, I would definitely be hoping to fight sometime end of the year or next year again. But it was a good experience seeing the other guys as well fighting. It was great. It was great. I loved it.
Well, let's fast forward now into your upcoming fight now, or you just recently had against Owen Cooper. You decided to go back down weight class, you alluded to, going back down to welterweight. What led to that fight? And overall, just take us through that fight and what led to that fight there. Hello, can you hear me?
No,
Hold on. I can't see you anymore. One sec. We'll go a quick commercial break and we'll hop right back to it. There we go. Can you see me?
yeah,
All right,
I'm back. I'm
perfect.
back.
All right, perfect,
Yes.
perfect. Sweet. So I've already asked that question then. So let's head back into now the most recent time. Owen Cooper, you get into this fight and you decide to go back down to welterweight, as you just alluded to. What kind of came about that fight and how did that fight come to fruition?
That fight come to me, I would say, early start of the year.
Okay.
I thought, yeah, this is another fight for me to stay busy, keep active, and push me forward, in the welterweight division. So I said, yeah, let's have it. I looked at him and I said, this guy, Owen Cooper, he's beatable. He's been beaten. He's fight. His confidence may be a bit low. This is an opportunity that I can capitalize on.
Mhm.
So I took it. And I said, yeah, let's get back down to welterweight. Probably, I did say to my coaches, this is probably my last year fighting at welterweight.
Okay.
So we just got to try. We just got to try, go out there, see what we can do. And yeah, we come up short. Um, the weight was tight for me, but No excuse. I still made the weight. I still got in there, but I didn't get the result.
You talked about the weight a couple of different times, and I want to elaborate a little bit more on that because, as you said, you were up at 155, 160 for a couple of fights, and obviously it was a little bit different situation, but still, you got used to that weight for a little bit then. Coming
Hmm.
back down, that weight cut had to be difficult for yourself. The weight cutting process, did that impact the results that happened against Owen Cooper?
I believe so. I believe it did. The
Hmm.
weight cut was very hard. Um, I got to a weight and it was just hard. It started being hard to be shift, and it was like I was balancing there. It was hard to get down to them last couple pounds was just really hard, and yeah, we end up doing it at the end of the day. But I wasn't the same in there.
You talked about that in the beginning of the year. You said this was probably going to be your last year at 147. Do you believe that was your last fight now that you've lost, now that you have could possibly move up now? Do you feel like that was your last fight? You'll be fighting 147 and now you're going to move up to 154?
Definitely, that's my last fight at 147. I won't be going back down for anybody.
Okay. Now that's obviously a huge thing because we look at your career now, 32 years old, you now move up to this next weight class in which we could probably see be a lot more comfortable in the weight. What can we expect now
Mhm.
for you going forward? Now, being at 154, new weight class, not as tough a weight cut. What can we expect from Chris Congo now at 154?
I think I'll definitely be a lot more explosive.
Hmm.
I'll be a lot sharper. I'll be a lot not fitter. The engine will be there now.
Okay.
I'll be able to go um and just put my punches together, man. And I'm sure that I'll be able to add a bit more power. I think in the welterweight the last year or two, I'll say 2 years, getting down to welterweight kind of took away a bit of my power. But yeah, now I get to show and prove.
If I were to ask you, let's look at the next 12, 18 months for yourself. What are the things that you want to accomplish and get done? Or even what could we see yourself? If I were to talk to you, like I said, a year and a half from now, where do you think we could see? How many fights? What do you have accomplished? What are some of the things you see yourself accomplishing in the next 12 to 18 months now? Well, at 154.
At 154, most likely the British title, if not the British European, and yeah, just build up from there. Get a few fights under my belt, stay
Mhm.
busy, stay active, and yeah, just get the titles that need to be grabbed. Like I said, the British and European.
Overall, this will be obviously a unique jump for yourself. And like you said, you're probably going to have to build yourself up a little bit. So when can we possibly see you back in the ring? Is there already discussions on that? Or when can we see you return to the ring?
There's discussions on that of me fighting in another country.
Okay.
Can't say much of it yet. We're looking
Sure.
at August, September times, and hopefully another one and towards the end of the year, December, for maybe an international title.
All right. I love that, man. Well, I got a few more things before I let you go, Chris. One of which is I want to pick your brain a little bit on the boxing scene. And somebody else just asked to comment in the comment section. When we look at the upcoming fight this upcoming weekend, Josh Taylor's fighting a fight against a former guy you obviously lost to, we talked about earlier. When you talk about this
Mhm.
fight upcoming now, who do you have winning that fight?
It's a good fight.
Hmm.
When Josh was training with Shane McGuigan and Ben Davison, I'd sparred him for probably the five
Okay.
years of his career. After the Ara Davis fight, I sparred
Hmm.
him for every single fight. So I know him very well. I've fought Echo. I know him very well.
Right.
And for me, I got Josh winning this fight just purely based on the fact that Josh likes people that come towards him.
Good
You've
point.
seen him against Barunchik. You've seen him against Ramirez. He boxes his best when people come to him. I think for a fighter like myself, good counter puncher, a fighter like Jack Catterall, good
Mm-hmm.
counter puncher, a fighter even like Regis Prograis, he won, but it was a
Mm-hmm.
very close fight.
Right.
Someone that knows how to counter and just pick his shots. Josh doesn't do so well against them guys.
Good
So
point.
I see him winning against Echo, but it's not gonna be easy.
I agree, man. So I also want to look at the 154 division for yourself again, real quickly. And there's obviously lots of great guys you could possibly go up against out there in the Britain, the domestic scene. Is there somebody you have your eyes on? Like, if you could go pick anybody, obviously after you build yourself up, let's say a year from now, is there someone that you would love to go out there and fight?
Yeah, definitely. I would love to fight probably Tim Tszyu.
All right.
He's looking good. He's done well. He lost against this guy.
Sebastian
I
Pandora
forgot his
or
name.
Bakram.
Uh, Bakram. Yeah,
Right.
Bakram's very good as well.
Yep.
So yeah, man. I just at this age and this time of my career, I want to mix it with anybody once I can build up myself up and get a few titles under my belt.
Obviously, with you being 32 years old, obviously you're up there in age a little bit. You're kind of working your way through that point. How many more years do you have in this? Do you feel like you're still fully energized? We could still see you out there for many more years. Do you feel like you're on more towards the tail end of your career? Where do you feel like from a standpoint of how many more years you have left?
I believe I've still got a lot more years left
All
in
right.
me. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at my career, there's been a lot of inactivity that's
Over.
just
Yeah.
been purely based down to, um,
Get him back in here in 1 second. There. Can you hear me?
oh my God. Hello?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you. Yep, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, apologies. Someone was
All
trying to
good.
call me.
No
But
worries.
yeah, like I said, um, I think once I still got a long time left. The
Mhm.
inactivity took a lot. And yeah, man, now I'm gonna push.
That is a unique thing. I think when we talk about fighters, one of the biggest things is how much damage you obviously take on in your career. And some people would say, okay, a guy at 34, 35 years old, whatever it might be, that fought, 20 times in their career would be a little bit different than a guy that's obviously fought 30 sometimes in some brutal fights. You have had the inactivity, and in a way, you could possibly say it's been a blessing in disguise at this point in your career now because obviously you haven't taken as much damage. How much benefit
Mhm.
does that in a way give you now, knowing that, okay, at the end of the day, you have only fought 20 fights in your career now? How much more kind of like you said, juice or energy does that give you knowing that you could still have a few more good years in your career?
No, it actually it brings me on, knowing that I haven't had the hardcore brutal fights,
Yeah.
um and just knowing that I haven't took that much damage is a blessing,
Hmm.
It's a blessing, and I can only say thanks to God for that. But there's still a lot more left to show and to do.
Love that, man. Well, I got a couple questions before I let you go, Chris. One of which is that do you go by the nickname Too Slick? I got to know the backstory
Mhm.
behind that. How did that come to be?
That come to be one of the amateur shows that I boxed on. I boxed
Okay.
against the army, and it was actually the crowd that was chanting "Too Slick,"
All
and
right.
then from then it just stuck with me.
So when the crowd started chanting that, you just knew that was the nickname you're going to go with going forward then?
Yeah, yeah. When I got home and I actually sat down, I said, "Yeah, Too Slick, that's the one."
I love it, man. Well, I got one final question for you, Chris. The question I like wrapping up every single interview with, and that's talking about your legacy. You just said you got quite a few good years in the tank left for yourself, but when that day does
Yeah.
come, you step away from boxing. What do you want your legacy to be for what you've accomplished both inside and outside of the ring?
I want people to know that I was definitely one of the best to come out of the UK. That's where
Uh,
my legacy lies, and that's where it will lie. And I believe that will happen.
I love the answer, Chris. Well, Chris, I appreciate you for taking time to come on in, man. I cannot wait to see what God's got in store for you. Of
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
course, you're always welcome on, Chris. God bless.
Cheers.
I appreciate y'all for tuning into that interview. I'll get that clipped up and edited out and then post on my YouTube channel very, very shortly. I'm going to go on a quick break and I'll get back into the remainder of the show. See you guys shortly. going on, everybody? Welcome back to the SchuZ Show. My apologies for the little bit of a delayed commercial break, I should say, for that one. But let's get into the rest of this show now, everybody. So just for a quick heads up and reminder for everybody tuning in, those of you that are tuning in live, you guys can always go have comments in this comment section. I'll make sure to either ask those questions if I can, if they make sense during the duration of the interviews with my guests, or if it's in a segment like right now, you guys ask some questions, I'll make sure to get back to you guys and open up a portion of the show for just answering questions and talking with you guys. So that's what I've got in store for now. There also will be a chance later on in the future. I plan on adding in a call-in, so we'll see if that happens later on. But if you have any questions, make sure to put in the comment section. I'll make sure to get right back to you guys. So there's two things I'm going to get into to wrap the show up. There's one bit of news I'm going to announce first, and then we're going to play a little fun game. So I'll get into that in a moment. But let's get into the very first news portion first. Floyd Schofield Sr. said that they declined Abdullah Mason's $1 million fight deal to sign with Golden Boy for a 5-year, $5 million deal. Listen, I've said this before. Floyd Schofield Jr. has a chance to be a very, very successful boxer. He has all the right tools to be a world champion. He has the potential to have a good boxing career, very good boxing career. I think the biggest thing holding Floyd Schofield Jr. back is his dad. I think that when you look at what is being brewed right there, it's a little bit irresponsible. Well, not even a little bit. It's very irresponsible. And I don't know every single detail. I'm not involved in the relationship or anything along those lines. But what I will say is this. When you look at the way that he has this large bit of control over Junior, to the extent where he's not even able to go do things by himself. Every interview you see is done with his dad. Everything you see is always with his dad involved. I don't think that's a healthy balance there. I think the way that Bill Haney does it is a lot different than Devin Haney. The way that Bill Haney does it with Devin Haney is a lot different than the way that Senior does it with Junior in regards to Floyd Schofield's. You see, what Bill Haney does is fine to a certain extent. Obviously, he's vocal. Obviously, he's loud. He does it more so like a LeVar Ball, if you would say. But he allows Devin Haney to still be himself and go out in life. Yet, when we see what Floyd Schofield Sr. is very, very different. It's a little bit concerning to the extent of how much control he still keeps over Floyd Schofield Jr. And I believe that it is hindering his career drastically. I'm not sure what Floyd Schofield Jr. is going to do about that, but if I were him, I'd have to find a way to start separating it a little bit. And this deal that Floyd Schofield Sr. went on and boasted about, saying that, okay, they signed with Golden Boy for 5 years for $5 million, and that is why they turned down Abdullah Mason's $1 million deal to fight, is ridiculous. Anybody that reads this, let me clarify this. For those of you that are not listening directly to the words I just said, they turned down for one fight against Abdullah Mason, which would have been a potential title eliminator between two of the top prospects in the weight class in America, for $1 million for one singular fight on one day, one training camp, one fight for $1 million. They turned that down for a 5-year, $5 million deal. That the math isn't adding thing up really well right there. You're telling me that over one fight, let's say a training camp, 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, and then you're saying one fight day, you're going to get paid $1 million, but instead you're going to go fight countless times, probably 2 or 3 times over the duration of a year with Golden Boy for $1 million. And those fights, while they said that they guarantee them to be in title eliminators and this, that, and the third, what was guaranteed to you on paper was to go fight Abdullah Mason and what would have been a massive fight in America, because you're having two of the top prospects at 135 fight each other, and it would have been a potential title eliminator for $1 million. But you're going to turn that down over a 5-year deal, getting locked in with Golden Boy for only $5 million. It just doesn't make any sense. And there's a difference for what you need to have as managers in boxing. For a lot of boxers, yes, as a boxer, you're not going to always deal about the negotiations, the prices, promotion, that stuff. That's to your manager's side. But I feel like there's just such a extreme amount of censorship, maybe even is probably the proper word, that Senior has over Floyd Schofield Jr. And when you talk about Floyd Schofield Sr. thinking that this is such a smart, great idea that they just signed Golden Boy, it's ridiculous. Sure, locking in the money long term, this, that, and the third, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you had Abdullah Mason, which would have been a big fight to make. And you turned down $1 million for one singular fight for a 5-year, $5 million deal. I don't see the point in doing that. Unless you truly do believe in your mind that you have a 0% chance of beating Abdullah Mason. And if that's the case and you thought you had no chance of beating Abdullah Mason, so you wanted to make sure you put protection in there so that if you were to lose Abdullah Mason, obviously fights would not be worth as much anymore, then fine. But that's pretty much all you can. That's the only way around this I see it making sense. And so my advice to Floyd Schofield Jr. is you have to find a way to separate from your dad a little bit. He can't be in your life 24/7. You're in your 20s now. There's no point in having your dad be with you in every single interview, every place you go. You can have separation. There's no problem I have with having a loud dad. Like I said, Bill Haney, while he can be annoying, He can be crazy. Bill Haney does allow Devin Haney to live his own life a little bit. But what Floyd Schofield Sr. is doing to Floyd Schofield Jr. is not okay, in my opinion. And if Jr. does not separate from his dad a little bit, there's going to be serious repercussions in his career, as I think this is going to end up being for himself. So that's the only boxing news I have set for today I want to get into. But I have had this plan now for a little bit of time. And I was waiting for a day that's going to be a little bit of a slow news day in boxing for me to roll this out for you guys. And here's what we got in store for now. I'm going to go through every single weight class in boxing. I'm going to give you guys the best fight to make, as well as the biggest fight in boxing to make. And what I'm going to say is some rules right now around this, because there's going to be some confusing situations here. Here's the rules I've set for this right now. They must be currently in the weight class according to the rankings, and I can only use a fighter according to one ranking class. So there's a couple guys to think off the top of my mind. Conor Benn, he is ranked in both 147 by a couple of things, as well as 154. I'm only going to put him in one of those. So I'm not going to have him be the top, the biggest guy, the best fight to make, the biggest fight to make at 147 and 154. So that's going to be the case, as well as you must also be active in the rankings. I know Pac-Man was just added into the rankings, but he does not fight, and that's a whole other story for that situation. So guys like Pac-Man is not going to be in there. The Charlo brothers will not be in there. Those type of situations. Just to kind of outline the table for you guys, that's the rules for the situation. And also clarify, the best fight is clearly not going to be the biggest fight. The best fight is the two most talented fighters making the best fight possible. The biggest fight for this next section will be the fight that would sell the biggest. Whether that be domestically, that be internationally, depending on the weight class, that does matter. And it might not be the best fight, but it's the biggest fight, the most eyes, the most casual fans that would want to go watch it. It might not make a lot of sense, but casual fans would tune into it. So just clarify those are the rules. Let's hop into this game now. The heavyweight division. The best fight, in my opinion, to make is Alexander Usyk versus Joseph Parker. I believe stylistically and I believe talent-wise, that is the best fight to make at the heavyweight division. The alternative to that will be Usyk versus Dubois, which we are getting at Wembley Stadium. Either one is fine with me, but in my opinion, I think stylistically, the Joseph Parker chess match with Alexander Usyk would be phenomenal to watch. The biggest fight in the heavyweight division, which I actually think is the biggest fight in all of boxing, is Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. When you talk about domestically, how big that's going to be, you could sell at Wembley Stadium. That is the biggest fight to make in the heavyweight division. Alternatively, there were a lot of things on the table for this one where I came to the conclusion of, because of the fact that you're going to go UK versus United States of America, and this does partially hinge on the fact that I expect Deontay Wilder to go out and have a big fight in a couple of weeks. This should be an easy setup, and if he gets a big KO, this fight would be the second biggest. Wilder and AJ. As I said, is it anywhere near the best? Is it a good fight to make? No. Is it entertaining for true boxing fans? No. But would that fight sell still massively because of the fact that you're having UK versus United States of America, two mega names that casual fans would be entertained in seeing? Yes. And that's the reason I put that fight over the likes of a few other ones. It still would be a mega fight to make in boxing, especially if Wilder should go out there and have a big win against the trash can that's going to be fighting in a couple weeks. Let's go to the cruiserweight division. The best fight to make, I think, is easy here. Jai Opetaia, Zurdo. No other fight you need to be making in boxing right now besides Jai Opetaia and Zurdo. The alternative, Jai Opetaia versus Badou Jack, but the gap between those two is massive. Everybody wants to see Jai versus Zurdo. The biggest fight also is Jai Opetaia versus Zurdo. That's pretty straightforward in that division. The alternative for that, Jai Opetaia versus CBS. There was a lot of fight brewing right there when CBS was the world champion prior to taking the Zurdo fight. I think the rivalry was kind of starting to brew a little bit, and that was the fight to make. You talk about British, you talk about Jai Opetaia, that's a big fight you could make down the road. Light heavyweight, the best fight to make is Bivol versus Beterbiev. I've said this time and time again. I love Benavidez. Bivol Beterbiev, I think that's number 4, number 5 pound for pound rankings right now. That's who I've got. It doesn't get much better than that. It's probably the best fight you can make in boxing still to this point in time. The alternative to that is a darn good alternative. Dimitri Bivol versus David Benavidez. And I think we're going to end up getting that fight when the fight rematch or the trilogy happens with Beterbiev and Bivol. But that's the alternative there. The biggest one is definitely going to be Dimitri Bivol versus David Benavidez, though. When you talk about those two guys, that would be huge. Benavidez has the biggest brand in all of boxing right now in that division. And you talk about those two guys, would be a huge fight to see. Then the alternative for that, Bivol versus Beterbiev. You could make a debate, and a legitimate debate, that it's Benavidez versus a guy like Callum Smith or Anthony Yard, something along those lines. But I'm going to go put up with Bivol. I think it's still a big fight to make. At 168, the one that's tough about this weight class is that I believe that there's a large gap between Canelo Alvarez and everybody else at 168. So therefore, I'm not going to put him in any one of the best fights to make at 168. Simply because, as I said, I don't think there's a competitive fight for Canelo Alvarez at 168. So the best fight to make, in my opinion, Caleb Plant, Christian and Billy. I believe that those are the two top guys not named Canelo Alvarez. Alternatively, I think Christian and Billy versus Pacheco stylistically would be a great fight to make. That would be a great fight. The biggest fight, Canelo Alvarez, Caleb Plant rematch. I think when you talk about the two brands of those guys, obviously that would be a huge fight to make again. Alternatively, you could have Caleb Plant versus Berlanga or Canelo versus Berlanga. Now, the truth is that both those fights that we'd have, I didn't want to put two Canelos with former guys they already fought. And so I think the brewing of how big of a rivalry you have already starting to form with Caleb Plant and Berlanga needs to happen. You could say Charlo, but I said Charlo's not involved in this ranking list. At middleweight, 160, the best fight, Janibek versus Adames. I have interviewed countless guys at 160. Every single one of them but one has said they want to see Janibek versus Adames. That's the fight I want to see. That's the best fight to make at middleweight. The second biggest one, or the best one, Janibek versus Laura. A unification, great fight to make. The biggest fight to make at middleweight, Janibek versus Chris Eubank Jr. You're going to have Chris Eubank Jr. is by far the biggest name to have now at 160. That's the guy that I want to see. And I think Janibek, Chris Eubank Jr. would be massive. Secondly, alternatively, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Carlos Adames. You could argue that's the biggest one, but those are the two options I've set there. At 154, the best fight to make is Bud Crawford versus Bachram. I think Bachram is one of the most underrated fighters in the world right now. That would be a massive fight to make. Alternatively, Bachram versus Virgil Ortiz. You could say Virgil versus Bud Crawford, but I think Virgil Ortiz versus Bachram would be a massive fight to make there as well. The biggest fight to make in the division is Bud Crawford versus Conor Benn. I would love to see those two guys go after it. That would be a massive fight to make. I don't know if that's ever realistic, but biggest fight, as big as Conor Benn is right now, as big as Terrence Bud Crawford is right now, that's the biggest fight to make. You could do that either in the United States of America or the UK. Alternatively, would be either Conor Benn or Bud Crawford versus Virgil Ortiz. That's the second biggest fight to make at 154. Let's head over to welterweight now, 147. The best fight to make is Boots Ennis versus Brian Norman. I think those are the two guys we all want to see. That's a perfect unification fight to have there. Alternatively, Boots versus Devin Haney. That would be a great fight to make right there. I think stylistically, that'd be good to see. That's the second best fight to make. The biggest fight at welterweight, Jerome Boots Ennis versus Ryan Garcia. You could argue Devin Haney, that's the alternative here. Now, because of the way that Ryan Garcia performed, it does dim the light here. Beforehand, this was without a shadow of a doubt going to be Ryan Garcia. But still, I think when you talk about the biggest brands, the way that Ryan Garcia can promote a fight, the build up to that fight, I do believe that Ryan Garcia and Boots would still be a big fight to make, if at least the biggest fight to make in the weight class. Second to Devin Haney and Boots would be the second option there. At super lightweight, 140, the best fight to make is Teofimo Lopez versus Richardson Hitchens. Alternatively, Richardson Hitchens versus Gary Antoine Russell. I really do like Gary Antoine Russell. I think he did his thing against Rayo. I think the way he's looking right now, preparing for his upcoming fight, he looks legit. I would like to see those two fights. The biggest fight to make in a weight class, Teofimo Lopez versus Richardson Hitchens. That would be a massive fight to make. You have the New York ties, domestic fights right there would be a huge fight to make. You could do that probably at Madison Square Garden, the Barclays, whatever it would be. Massive fight there. Alternatively, the Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos rematch. That's a fight that I'm still shocked has not happened yet. Teofimo Lopez has one loss on his record. George Kambosos. And while Kambosos is certainly a good fighter, don't get that twisted, Teofimo Lopez is a better fighter than George Kambosos overall. So the fact of the matter that Teofimo Lopez has not wanted that revenge yet, shocking. But I think that Kambosos, especially if Kambosos goes and beats Hitchens, that becomes the number one fight to make in the weight class, both best and the biggest. Let's go to 135. The best fight to make at 135 is simple. Tank Davis, Shakur Stevenson. No debating that. And while I'm at it, that's also the biggest fight to make. The alternative to that is Tank Davis versus Keyshawn Davis. That's also a very good fight. Then you have the alternative to that would be Tank Davis. The biggest fight would be the Tank Davis versus Keyshawn Davis or Lomachenko. Either one of those would be big. Obviously, if you're going to have the biggest fight at 135, Tank Davis must be involved. So that's that answer there. Super featherweight, 130. The best fight, Navarrete versus Lamont Roach. I think that would be actually a really underrated fight to make there. I would love to see that fight come to fruition. If Lamont Roach stays at 130, that's obviously to be determined. But for now, he's according to the rankings, he is at 135. So that's the best fight to make there. Alternatively, Navarrete versus Foster. I think that also would be a good fight. The biggest fight, Oshaki Foster, Lamont Roach. Two American guys, domestic fights. Both would be a good fight to make there. The second to that would be Oshaki Foster, Ray Ford. Both those guys I've been seeing on X have been going back and forth. I feel like that's a fight that is brewing at the moment. And I think that would be a big fight to make at 130. 126. Let's hop into featherweight. The best fight to make, Espinoza versus Nick Ball. I get it. It might just be myself and how I want to see that fight, but I think both those are the two best guys at the weight class. And also, it would be one of the most unique fights to see. There's an 11-inch difference between the two of them. That would be phenomenal to see how that plans out right there. The alternative to that would be Espinoza versus Fulton. That also would be a good fight to make. And then the biggest fight. I think Stephen Fulton versus Nick Ball would be huge. You could easily do that fight somewhere in the UK. I think that would be a massive fight to make. The alternative to that would be Espinoza versus Nick Ball. The biggest fight to make at 126 would have to revolve around Nick Ball being involved. I think he's the biggest brand, the biggest name. And as I will say, UK fan base, they have the best fan base in boxing. I'd say them in Japan is probably neck and neck, depending on what you like. But those are the two most diehard fan bases for boxing. And so Nick Ball being one of the biggest stars out there right now, that would be something that Nick Ball has to be involved in for the biggest fight at 126. Super bantamweight 122. Let's go to the best fight to make. And once again, very, very similar to how I said about Canelo Alvarez at 168. Nobody at 122 at the moment is anywhere in the realm of where Inoue's at. I don't think that you're going to throw anybody against Inoue that's going to be competitive for him. And so when I put this, the best fight to make at 122 does not involve Inoue. You might debate that because you might think Inoue versus MJ is going to be a good fight. I don't think so. It is what it is. So the best fight to make at 122 is MJ versus Goodman. Goodman just came off a good performance the last week on Wednesday, actually 1 week ago from today. That would be the best fight to make. Alternatively, MJ versus Alan David Piscasio. Piscasio was the guy who was supposed to go fight Inoue instead of Cardenas. Obviously, we were treated to a special fight that Cardenas more than did his job, but Piscasio would still be a good fight. The biggest fights, however, have to involve Inoue. Therefore, the biggest would be Inoue versus MJ, which we'll be getting in September, as well as Inoue versus Goodman, who Goodman could have had his opportunity to fight Inoue 2 times, both in December and then January. The cuts prohibited that. Does he ever get his chance again? I don't know. But it still would be a good fight. You have Australian ties, Japan ties, 2 big nations involved there. 118. Almost done with this. 118. The best fight to make at 118 is Junto versus Nishida. Nishida is an incredible fighter. Phenomenal fighter. If you have not watched him, I would highly encourage you to wake up early in the morning. If you're in America, at least that's what we have to do, to go watch him. He is phenomenal. Junto Nakatani versus him would be a great fight. Alternatively, Nishida versus Tatsumi. You could have said Junto versus Tatsumi, and I understand too, Tatsumi has now lost his belt. He's not going to be able to fight for about a year because of his eye injury. So I debated about whether or not to put him there, but at the moment, he still is listed on the rankings, so I decided to keep on my rules there. So Nishida versus Tatsumi would be a great fight, hypothetically. You could also say Tatsumi versus Junto, but I believe that the gap between Junto and Tatsumi is a little bit larger than it is for Nishida versus Tatsumi, so I put those two guys neck and neck there. Stylistically as well, they match up better. The biggest fight, Junto versus Nishida, as well as Junto versus Tatsumi. The biggest fight will have to revolve around Junto Nakatani. He's the biggest branded name at 118. 115. The best fight to make is Bam Rodriguez versus Fernando Martinez. The alternative to that is Bam Rodriguez versus Cafu. Both those fights would be the best fights to make in boxing right there, I believe. You could have made a debate. Fernando Martinez versus Roman Gonzalez. That also would be neck and neck. I could possibly put that instead of Bam versus Cafu, but I did go with Bam versus Cafu because I think Cafu is very underrated. I do like what he brings to the table there. I think he actually will be an interesting test for Bam Rodriguez when they fight in July. The biggest fight is Bam Rodriguez versus Fernando Martinez. The alternative to that is Bam Rodriguez versus Roman Gonzalez. Both of those would be big fights to make at 115. Let's go down to the flyweight division at 112. The best fight to make is Taraji versus Ibuki. That would be an incredible show. Ibuki is an incredible fighter. Moved up to 112. He did his thing. And I think you talk about a guy in Taraji who might be moving up to 115. I think he's actually done at 112. But at the moment, he's listed at 112. Taraji, Ibuki would be phenomenal. That also is the biggest fight to make in the division. Alternatively, though, Taraji versus Anthony Alaskazgua. That's another guy that I do like to see. That would be a good fight to make. The alternative for the biggest fight to make at 112 is Taraji versus Galal Yafi. That is a fight. I think Galal is an incredible fighter. I think he's going to be a world champion. I think he's going to be fun. He's going to have a great run there at 112 for as long as he lasts there. That would be a big fight. You talk about Japan, great win, great fight to make there domestically overall there. You could make it in Japan or you could do that in the UK. I probably would be held in Japan, but still, either way, it would be a great fight to make. The 108. Takami versus Araneta. Neither one is a world champion, but if you go by pound-for-pound rankings in the way I think they both are, they will both be world champions within the next few months. I think that's the best fight to make. Alternatively, Takami versus Badillo. I like both these guys as well. Let's go to the biggest fight to make at 108. Takami versus Rosa, and alternatively, Takami versus Santiago. Rene Santiago just pulled off that big upset a few months ago, becoming the world champion. I like what he brings to the table as well. The last one, minimum 105, the best fight to make, Collazo versus Jerusalem. I would love to see that fight. Collazo is the best fighter, the biggest name at 105. I believe he's going to become a multi-weight class champion in the future. He is a phenomenal fighter. But yes, the best fight is Collazo versus Jerusalem. The alternative for that is Collazo versus Zhu, coming out of China. He's a future world champion, in my opinion. The biggest fight to make is Collazo versus Zhu. That would be a great fight to make. And alternatively, the biggest fight to make at 105, and the final thing to list here in this group, is Collazo versus Jerusalem. As I said, Jerusalem's a world champion. He's a great fighter as well. I have Collazo winning that fight, but that still would be a big fight to make. With that being said, that concludes it. We just went through every single weight class. I listed the best fights and the biggest fights for each and every single one of them. Obviously, there's room to debate in a lot of those. I get that. These are just according to my opinion, according to my rules I put there, and that's the rankings I have set there. Now, before I wrap up the show, I want to go through some of the comments we got here from Rem. Let's see what we got here. Janibek needs to go to 168. I agree, man. I think for me, honestly, what I'll say this. If the fight against Adames is not on the table, move to 168. When you talk about Adames and Janibek, that is a great fight to make. You can unify. You obviously get 3 of the belts at that point in time. That would be huge for his legacy, his name. Also, Adames would be a great name to add to his resume because perfect fight. If that fight can't get done, and it feels like the only way that fight gets done is if Turkey gets involved. I feel like that's the way that we're both been looking at it because neither one has a massive brand right now. And therefore, they've been discussing this, that because of that factor, they're not able to get the big fights or lock in a big fight for that deal. So we're going to have to see Turkey get involved. And I would love to see that. I feel like unless Canelo Alvarez is on the table, which is not because he's fighting Bud Crawford, obviously September. So the next opportunity wouldn't be until May. I think that unless Canelo's on the table, you do whatever you can to get that fight with Carlos Adames made now. And if that does not come to fruition, then absolutely move to 168. It'd be great. You could go up there right away. You could go fight the likes of, obviously, hypothetically, Canelo, later on. But with Hamza Shiraz in the mix now, you have Edgar Berlanga, Jaime Munguia, Caleb Plant. Charlo's moving up there now. The winner of Darius Fulgham and Beck is going to be happening a week from Friday. You've got a lot of these guys that's in the mix. Obviously, other guys I didn't list as well. Calvin Simpson knows in the mix there. So a lot of good guys, as you alluded to. I think 168 would make a lot more sense financially as well as resume-wise, unless he can get the Carlos Adames fight in the near future. Obviously, if Laura came and presented himself and you still get a unification, that's fine. But I feel like there's a weird thing going on with Laura that he's kind of slowing down. He's probably going to retire in the near future. So I don't think that's going to happen. But Adames should be the number one thing as priority. If that's not on the table, then yes, move up to 168, start your run up there, and I think you'd be just fine there. Obviously, I think 168, the biggest thing about 168 is this. When you look at 168, everybody's just waiting for Canelo to, move on from boxing. And I think that time will come in the near future. We know he's got a fight in September. We know he has 2 fights on his Riyadh season deal next year. If he loses to Bud Crawford, the belts will all open up because I don't think Bud Crawford is sticking at 168. He might even just retire. So therefore, you could have all the belts open up in September if that upset happens. If not, though, he could either be stripped of a belt in the near future. He could also, 1 year from now, he's going to be, losing all the belts to open up when he retires. So a lot of moving pieces going to happen. Then when Canelo moves on, I feel like the division will move on because there's a big gap, as I alluded to earlier, between Canelo Alvarez and everybody else at 168. And when he moves on, all of a sudden the division becomes really interesting. You have 4 new champions, a lot of guys in the mix, and that would make the most sense. If Janibek's there at that point in time, that's the position he needs to be in because at that point in time, the belts open up. You can become a 2-division world champion, move up. These sort of things happen. That should be his game plan. So I appreciate you for tuning in again, though, for TJ and Ram. Appreciate you guys for commenting and tuning into the show. I'll be back on live tomorrow. It should be for 12 o'clock my time again. I'll be having a great guest. I'll announce that tomorrow morning who's going to be on the show. But I appreciate you guys all for tuning in today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' Wednesday. May God bless you guys all, and I will see you guys tomorrow. SchuZ out.